Ooh.
All right, welcome to episode 22, Shop Talk, with Jordan, Sam, and Trevor. We had some pretty good preamble on here. Probably should have pressed record when we started. Would have had some good laughs, but
Nope.
a lot of that stuff I think is going to chat a bit about. We'll probably get into a bit of it with the discussion that we have today. So typically we do a bit of an update, what's going on in the S&C world, and then we have a bit of a guest topic. And so that guest topic today is we're looking at some of the newest hires post-COVID. I mean, I guess we're still in COVID, so I can't really say that. But after the 18 months of COVID here, some of our newest hires in the collegiate setting of head coaches, which is pretty cool. Some of them are full-time on contract, and then some of them are also on temporary. So we've got a bit of a mix here for the next year. So we'll hopefully get into some good discussion there. So we're going to start off with, I think Trevor is going to give a bit of a CSCA update, and then to Jordan for the NSCA, I'll follow up with USPORT and Collegiate, and then we'll get rocking. So what do you got there, Trev?
You know what, Sam, to be honest, for the first time, I've got nothing. Seriously, we haven't done anything in the last month, right? We had, since the last meeting, if you remember the last meeting, we had a big retreat where we talked about the membership and the phase. We have two phases of membership coming in. First phase will take place at the end of this year, and it's just a general membership. After that, it'll be the next year, we're going to bring in phase two, which is the accredited member. But I think most of this crowd have already heard that. And so we've kind of had a bit of a hiatus. We had a long month because Sam was out kicking out babies and people on holidays. And our first meeting will be back this school year, will be this Sunday. So next Shop Talk, I'll have lots of updates, I'm sure.
And when's the AGM, Trev?
We haven't firmed up the date. Looks like the last weekend in October is, I think, what we're looking at, right? But I don't think we've advertised that yet.
And has it been decided on if that's going to be the current members or advisory or anything like that? Has it been decided on who's going to be invited?
Well, the AGM, well, at our last retreat, it was decided that it would be the advisory team that has voting rights. And so that would be like current members, quote unquote. And they'd all be invited, and hopefully we'll get a good turnout for that and get some new faces maybe and refresh the board. There's a couple openings that will come up. So. And Sheldon's term is technically done. So there's a president, and Elliot's term, I think, is done too, right?
Correct.
So anyway, so we'll have to, someone's got to run for pres. Go Sam, take it on. You got nothing else going on?
Yeah, got nothing. All right, Jordan, what do you got for the NSCA?
Same as a month ago. Coming soon. Sports science and performance.
Does everyone take the summer off? What's the deal here?
Coming soon. Anyways.
You know anybody who went to the conference in July?
No.
I don't know a single person.
My aptitude for that kind of stuff after the last 18 months has been fairly low. So I haven't totally fulfilled my role in updating on the NSCA stuff. In other news, not NSCA related, where we're currently, we are hiring a replacement for Dale LeBlanc, who got hired by the Canadians to work there with Douglas. So if you're interested or you know people interested, I'll post the link to the job in the chat there. It's going to be a pretty quick turnaround as far as posting goes. Yeah, we actually work regular hours. If you work weekends, you get days off. And we actually posted our pay band, 72 to 85K. So it's kind of like an actual job. I've never had anybody that I work with tell me that they can do my job better than me. So it's pretty good in the actual human performance world. Looking for a change and you got any questions about it exactly, hit me up on email or Facebook. Goes for anybody on here or anybody that sees the recording.
Are we trying like a
current collegiate that are on here like the sound of that? Want to make that jump after their first week of pre-COVID screening? Yeah, maybe. Holy.
What's the turnaround then? 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
No, it's like end of next week.
Oh,
oh man, end of next week because they're changing over the HR automated system or something. So it has to be posted before then, up until then, or you have to wait like a month, like something ridiculous. So if you're interested, get it in. If you're in doubt, get it in, hint in, look at the job D and make sure that everything that it, as you should be able to do, is in your cover letter. I have experience doing the following, colon, and continue on.
Have we done a shop talk on resumes and
No,
We
we
should
keep
do
talking
that.
about doing it, but yeah, we should. I teach that at Sheridan College. I have some
Yeah.
lecture slides on it. Yeah,
there
most
you go.
resumes are crap. They really are. There's high school, I call them.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a good idea, to be honest. The amount we usually get, what do we get? Emerson, I think for Justin's job, I think we got like 60 or 70 applicants, and it was like sifting through them was super easy because a lot of them, their resumes are quite poor, so pretty easy to go through, but probably had 3 that were possibly that could be interviewed. So I think it's a skill for sure that's lacking.
Let's do it.
Go ahead, Trev.
No, I was given a presentation for a group in Texas today, and they were asking about starting a new business and stuff. And I referred them to our shop talk, our last one from August. Did you check and see if we got much uptake from that recording? I haven't looked. See how many times it was reviewed. Yeah.
Take a look.
Anyway, interesting. See, we're trying to make a difference here. I don't know.
So USPORT and Collegiate altogether update. It's probably better that we get some update from some of you guys. Obviously, as you know, I've been on mat leave for the last 5 weeks. And so I don't have much of the ground floor update except what I've got from most of the ADs and having discussions of the new mandates that are out there and what you guys are kind of going through from a bird's eye view with respect to all of a sudden everyone has to be vaccinated and how much fun that sounds. So let's just get a quick update and we'll start from the Brock side, and then we'll get the Brock side for the OUA, and then we'll get Joe from Can West to just have a bit of a chat, and then Shawn, if you just want to have a chat from the East. Just kind of, let's just say the largest struggle that we had that's been going on right now within the collegiate setting. So we'll start with Dave.
Yeah, so I guess our largest struggle has just been managing the chaos. That is trying to return all of these athletes on such a short time frame and figure out who's vaccinated, who's not vaccinated, where they are in their exemption status. And then we also launched a rapid antigen screening program for the entire university. So our sports performance staff has been helping to facilitate that, namely Steve. So figuring out on campus who's vaccinated, who's not vaccinated, and providing them with rapid antigen screening, et cetera, so that we can hopefully play sports in a safe environment of some sort.
Okay, Joe, Can West, anything different on that side?
It's a shit show, like same stuff, where everybody has to be vaccinated to play, basically. So we did lose a couple athletes who refused to do it, and a few coaches actually. So right now the problem for us is that we're not just Canada West. We're also NAIA, and we're also have our men's rugby program is kind of Canada West, but it's more like plays in a men's league. And so like we have Trinity Western and UVic who have rugby programs, but those are only local USPORT programs, because Rugby Canada, I just found out, hasn't mandated anything. So like if you play in the club league, they're like, it could affect our season of play, and we're, you know, one of the top teams in the country, unfortunately. So that we just found out today. But our men's field hockey is in a similar boat. But if BC Field Hockey and Field Hockey Canada have something in play where everybody has to be tested, then they'll get to play. So this could actually jeopardize the season for them as well. But in terms of just generalized, everyone's been vaccinated. They had to have their first dose by the 7th. They have to have their second dose by, I think, the 15th. And if they want to play. And so our administrators basically said, if anyone objects to this or wants to talk about their scholarships, they can have a conversation with us. And Canada West just released a statement today, basically saying everybody has to be vaccinated.
So what about from an HR perspective with those staff that are like, I'm always interested on that side. What happens then?
It's not like a full-time staff. It would be like, you know, with a football program, you have a couple guys who are they come in after work and they're helping with the team. And to be honest with you, I told our head coach it's probably a good thing that these guys aren't around our kids.
Hanging around for t-shirts.
Well, they're good coaches,
Yeah.
and I'm sure they're good dudes, but fuck you. Sorry, that's like, if there's ever a time to get your shit done, it's now. I know I get a lot of the issues around it with our Black and Indigenous populations, with the history of the Tuskegee syphilis experience, the smallpox, all that stuff. Totally understand that. But like, it is 2021, and like, if you want to do this, you got to be a role model too, right? So we lost a couple of our kids because of that. I've heard Alberta is even worse.
Yeah, that's what I've heard as well. So Shawn, on the east side, is there anything much different than what you've heard from the OUA and Canada West, or is it all kind of the same out there too?
Well, like, numbers have been relatively not that bad here, so it's kind of in the works. They have mandated it. Like, each school was kind of waiting to pull the trigger on saying, it's going to be mandatory, but now the universities themselves are saying that it's mandatory for students to have it, which makes it easy for us in athletics as well. Tracking process and date is yet to be determined on when those have to be completed. I've heard a couple different dates, but those are just through the rumor mill at the moment. And then, like, PEI has a vaccination card that has to be filled out to enter Nova Scotia from any other province. I guess from New Brunswick or outside New Brunswick west of, you need to be twice vaccinated and show that proof. So those were all kind of set in standard anyway. So any of our outside of the province athletes are already twice vaccinated. So it doesn't seem to be a big issue. It seemed to kind of come as an announcement, and everybody's like, yeah, like, that's going to happen. And it's been pretty smooth so far, but we haven't had complete lists stated yet. So maybe there's some kind of trying to, sneak it about, but I've heard no backlash yet. So I also have to deal with those numbers and those checklists myself, which is wonderful. The therapy department is working with that. So that's wonderful. It's off my hands.
I'm interested to see, because there's quite a few programs missing quite a few key athletes, right? So it's going to make the first couple games quite interesting when you might not have your top athletes for a certain program. So I think it's fair game for most teams this year. It'll be a big shakeup.
What about, have any of you had any issues with anyone testing positive while vaccinated? Because that's coming too, right? Like, we're seeing, we're going to see that, I'm pretty sure, just judging by what everything is going on. So
Haven't seen it yet, but I mean, they're
like, is
going to
there
do
any protocol in place?
Sorry?
Do you have any protocols? Like, when we had it in the summer before this was mandatory, basically, if someone tested positive, we went through their circle and you said you're banned from all activities for X amount of time. And then everyone just threw that out the window once the vaccination started happening. And now we're back to it. And I think we're going to see something happen here relatively quickly.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they stick to their standards that they've had previously. It would be removal and all that sense. If they're positive and contact trace, which, I mean, in Atlantic Canada, they've done a pretty good job with contact tracing too, but it's been left up to the government for the most part, right? And again, like, the cases weren't crazy high. I don't know what the university setting was like. Like, they said it was pretty good last year. Like, there was no blow-ups, there was no big setbacks, other than they had to follow numbers rules for weight room. So there was a lot of sessions and they never really had any big setbacks when it comes to people testing positive yet. So if it happens, it would be interesting to see how well it's reacted to, I think. Because if it hasn't happened, I don't know if it'll be a shit show or be well dealt with.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. The next couple of weeks will be will tell a lot for sure across Canada. So we're gonna move on. Jordan, this is actually his topic that he had brought to us to have today. So he's gonna take the lead on this and kind of share why he was interested in having these four gentlemen on to have a chat. So Jordan, take it away.
Yeah, so like going back a number of years, kind of something that always really interested me from a nonfiction standpoint is like sports coach and athlete biographies and how do people get to where they are. And then obviously if you follow some of the big stuff in the US, like this often happens. Someone gets hired as part of a, you know, a big D1 school and there's a press release. They talk about that person and then, you know, the local radio station brings them on and all that kind of stuff. So I thought it would be cool to bring on a few of you guys that, you know, landed significant roles in a few different ways here, right across the country. You know, a couple of you know really well, and a couple of you don't really know or kind of know, and just tell your story a little bit. I think it'll be interesting to people, and then also just provide some anecdotes of how you got where you are instead of because I think everybody here will have some similarities, but a bit of a different path. What I'll do is I'll use the first question for you guys to introduce yourself, and you know, we'll kind of play it as we go, but not everybody will potentially answer every question, but you know, we're pretty free flowing with it. So we'll start off with Shawn, because he was already chatting there. Shawn Preston, so he's over at Acadia now as the manager of sport performance. Shawn, just a brief outline, and then what in your work history allowed you to qualify for this university position that you have now, do you feel?
Well, yeah, like well, I'm an East Coast guy. Like I grew up here, so it was always kind of where I wanted to end up in the long run of it. I've danced around quite a bit in a lot of different places. Like I've worked with Joe out in BC. I've worked in Manitoba. I've worked in Calgary. I've worked in Hong Kong and China, and did my university in the United States. So kind of following that coach, you know, the coach path that the D1 coaches always were, jumping around to whatever job was where they were going to learn and, you know, excel their career. I kind of did that early on, and then I kind of took a different adaptation to it and started to, you know, seek out where is it going to be the best fit for your overall career. And I think I had that, like some of my experience came from being at Manitoba, at the University of Manitoba, and that was my first university experience. And there I was assistant strength conditioning coach, and then was promoted to the head when my predecessor left. And then once, like my wife's job took us out of Manitoba, and sorry for the loud ring here. And it basically, it had me realize that I didn't really like the institute setting as much as I liked the university setting. So for me, it was kind of a waiting game. Like, when am I going to get back into a university job? And lo and behold, I was lucky enough that a few university jobs came up this year, and I had a chance to interview at a few of them, and I chose the closest one to home because I could be close to family, do what I want to do. It was a really good setup. They worked with me through some negotiations and really got there. But I think the biggest thing that got me there was the previous experience in a university setting and having like a similar structure. So like at Acadia, we do a revenue generated program to kind of beef up our budget. I've done that at Manitoba, leading it from a department standpoint, doing some teaching at Manitoba, helping, I think, carry over into how to deal with such a large group of student internship program components there. Like we have about 40 students in the Acadia program. So I think it's just a lot of similarities, and being able to tie that back in with some other experiences internationally was what made me, I guess, the guy they wanted. So long-winded answer for you right there.
Yeah, thanks, man. More importantly, are you rocking a home phone down there on the East Coast? Is that a home phone?
So
Yeah.
actually, like I'm in the middle of a move. So because I was with rugby at the Olympics, I had to delay my start, and then what that also did is delayed my move. So I've been driving back and forth from Wolfville to Miramichi, New Brunswick, where we had a house and all my stuff. So I'm in Miramichi right now, but we just had the moving truck leave today. So I'm at my mother's, and that's why I have a nice pink wall behind me and a real nice loud phone ring.
That's awesome, man.
And that kind of stuff. So yeah, visiting some family before we head back to Wolfville for Sunday when we do our orientation.
Wicked. we'll go over to Kris next. Kris Robertson out at Simon Fraser in a wicked looking strength coach office.
Yeah,
Windows, I bet.
no windows.
So
Don't
Kris,
stay
yeah,
there.
Kris, I know a bit of your history, but pretty quick riser through the institutional stream, as far as I would say. You were doing a lot of things privately before that. Give us a little bit of a outrun of how you ended up there, and then also for you, I know because we chatted about it, a pretty significant move. Like you've lived in the GTA your whole life aside from university, I believe, and you got a couple of young kids and a wife, and now you're in BC.
Yeah, so I'll start there. Kind of, everyone knows that like not a lot of jobs like this come up, especially in our SNC. You kind of go where jobs are, right? So as you can, Shawn's history, he's traveled like the globe pretty much, and I was fortunate enough where I got an internship in the CFL, and then that turned to an assistant job at the Toronto Argos. And then from there, I got to move to Rugby Canada, with actually to be in Toronto. So I would say for the first few years of my life, I was pretty lucky to work where I live and make a living and make a career out of this. So with the move here, it was actually quite easy, and I actually have to thank COVID for that, just because, we were looking through screens like this for a year, family dinners, Christmas, things like that. So it's just like, what's the difference of being across the country if you're still going to be going through Zoom and we're in COVID still? Is there going to be a lockdown? Who knows? So it made the move easy for us. My wife was excited to do something new. Family was on board, so it actually all worked out. But I would say being here is a great opportunity, and I think we could really do something here.
Well, thanks, buddy. And then we'll shift over. We'll go with Mac next and Emerson. And before Mac starts, it was kind of publicly out there, but one of the things that a little bit of a different angle we want these guys to chat about, obviously as much as they feel comfortable, they're Mac's in a replacement role on a 1-year contract, and Emerson is covering off a maternity leave for Sam, actually, on, I guess, an approximately 1-year contract. I don't know how long Sam's off for, but just how that factored into how you guys got in the position as well, and then as we move on to other questions, just your line of thinking and your strategy throughout this whole. Mac, how'd you end up where you are or back where you are?
Loaded question. All that
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
on the back end. I guess my start was really the kin program at Guelph Humber. There I did a co-op / internship at Fitz Toronto with Thomas Lamb and Corey Kennedy, and learned a lot about what this industry kind of has to offer, but there wasn't many jobs kind of like this out there at that time. I met Matt Nickel actually through our president at Guelph Humber for kin, played football with him. So he came in and talked to us about what he does in strength conditioning. And at that time he was kind of just starting BioSteel, I think. So it was kind of an eye opener that this kind of pathway in industry existed. And through that, I guess, Fitz experience, I graduated, came home, and I was looking for something similar to that, which you couldn't really get once you came back to Guelph. Like, I'm looking at Good Life, I'm looking at all those box gyms, and they just weren't cutting it. I was told that I was overqualified to be a personal trainer, and they basically didn't even give me a call back after the process. So I just said, screw them, basically. And then the next closest experience I found was Josh Ford started at Guelph, basically like the summer before. And I just went and met him. I cold called him, asked if I could sit down and talk to him, ask him what he does, and then basically just ask him if I could help out. So the classic, just how can I help you kind of thing. I really wanted to learn. So I joined him in 2015, it must have been summer, going into that year. And I basically never left. So I was even luckier than Kris, I think, to find something close to where I live and didn't really have to go anywhere. I worked privately as I was kind of volunteering with Josh for a while. at a local gym in Guelph that was more strength conditioning oriented. It wasn't like a box gym or chain gym. And then Josh kind of moved me up the ranks. I started working with the soccer teams on kind of just a small contract that turned into assistant position while we were generating revenue with GPA, the Griffin Performance Academy, which helped float my contract a little bit. And then that kept growing to more of a TFT position, kind of pivoted and got away from soccer, started doing basketball, volleyball. And then recently with COVID, they let me go. They kept Josh on and like a restricted kind of contract. I kind of just did my own thing, had my own business running hybrid online and in person. And then Josh decided to leave and pivot himself and go out to a farm and train in a horse barn. So I applied for his job and now I'm here.
I think you started there in 2014 for fall. Yeah.
2014? Oh, 2014
man.
summer. Yeah. Going into
Yeah.
2015.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Josh decided to go and be Josh doing something else. Cool. Excellent. Jake Peralta up next.
Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks Sam, Trevor, Jordan for having me.
Oh man.
I guess I'm a little bit different than everyone else, is that I've kind of been in the same place. So I was born and raised in Aurora, Ontario. I was a football player my whole life and had an opportunity to come to York to play football, kind of with the aspirations to become a gym teacher. So I got into kin and everything was going well and good. And my second year at the university playing football, I realized that there was a work study position in the strength conditioning department. So that would allow me to stay for the summers, to get paid, to train, and then be in the space. And that just seemed like a win-win for me. So Adam was the head at that time. And he was, after bothering him a few times over the course of a year, he took me on for one summer. And that was kind of my first go as a work study. So kind of supervising the space and just, getting my feet wet, training and enjoying just having access to the gym on the weekends and doing whatever. And over the next couple of years, and then my second, third, fourth year, started realizing that, this was a direction that I could take. I saw the light at the end of the tunnel with Adam being there. We had Dale there at that time. And it seemed like a career opportunity that I was really interested in. It blended coaching, which I love to do. I was passionate about coaching and what I was learning in school and passionate about the weight room. So as I kind of got to my third, fourth, fifth year, starting to think about, okay, if I want to take this seriously, I probably need to get some more experience. So I kind of dived off and spent about 4 or 5 years in the private sector while I was finishing my university degree, and about 2 or 3 years after the fact. So I was actually working in a gym on York's campus, but in the ice rink right across the street from Tate McKenzie. So again, staying on campus, and I've never really left. And then not really thinking too much. I wasn't sure what my next direction was at that point in time. I was thinking master's, I was thinking internship in the States, what should I move? And then, one afternoon I got a call from Bart, who was the manager of the strength conditioning department at the time. And he encouraged me to apply for the assistant position, which came up, which to me obviously was my dream, was a huge goal. And I applied and was lucky enough to be brought on in 2018. So I started as the assistant in 2018 here at York, and that was full time with Adam. And then Adam turned around and left within a week of me starting. So he's kind of like, okay, here you go, figure it out for yourself for a few months. And I kind of had to go at it for September to December until we found our new head, which ended up being Sam, which is probably one of the best things that happened for my career. And so the last 3 years we've worked together. And so as you guys know, she's back in March, surprised me with the, yes, I am leaving soon and I'm having a kid. So we want you to kind of take over. And I think, through that experience together, that she trusted me, the university trusted me to kind of fill in for the year. And that's how I kind of ended up here. So I've been at York since 2011 as a student, as an athlete, now as a coach, and don't really plan on leaving anytime soon. I really enjoy it. And it's been a really good start to this semester as the interim, and looking forward to see where this goes over the course of the year.
I like your story, man. Like, we've only chatted, I think, a couple of times, but I've heard a lot of it from Sam and Dale, and because the reason why I like it is I feel like that's successful for you and for the organization, but it's usually one that a lot of us criticize, right? Like, this guy's only been here, this is all he knows, and now he's just hanging around. Like, that's what people, or I know that's what I tend to classify those situations as, but you've had the opportunity to work like 3 very experienced coaches, alongside them, as your coach, as your supervisor, as colleagues. And then also these situations come up where you just get like right in the deep end and just like swim like hell to stay above water and just do it. Like I like it. Story. I like the Emerson story. So I guess we'll kind of have two volunteers, or let's ask all of you. What was your hiring process? And as you feel comfortable, what do you think? What did you like about it? And what do you think like really doesn't serve well to separate out candidates? We'll start off with Kris.
Sorry about that. So my hiring process was a 3-step process. So it started off with you've been selected, so it was like a 30-minute kind of get to know me. They asked me, simple questions, and then from there it went to I had to create like a 100-day plan. So I had to do like a 20 to 30-minute presentation on like what my plan was going to be for the first 100 days. So being a football guy, I broke it down to 4 quarters and kind of just said, this is the step process that I'm going to do. And then after that, it was another interview where it was just like, I meet all the coaches, and then they kind of they drill their last final questions, scenario questions. And then from there, it was a call. This was really my first process of actually going through a formal interview. Like many SNCs, I got a job because I knew someone, right? You have a good relationship with someone, it goes from there. So as for the process, I didn't know what to expect. So, had many calls with Joe, kind of, help me along with that process, to kind of explain things. I'm like, I have to do a presentation. He's like, yeah, that's normal. I'm like, oh, I didn't expect that. So moving forward, I feel like when I go on to another job or anything like that, I think I'll be ready for anything else that's really thrown at me.
Nice,
Who was on your committee, Kris? Do you feel that they really knew what they're looking for? Did you get the feeling they kind of understood it, what we do?
No, like many things, like the people that hire and fire us are like people who don't know what we do, right? So it's more so, I think it's more so of a fit. So like the AD was on there, my supervisor who was like in charge of like advising and things like that. Then there was the coaches. I think it's just more so, do you feel comfortable? Do you trust your athletes to be with me? And whoever I hire, do you trust that I'm going to get the job done? It was more so a personality and a fit than are you qualified to get people bigger, faster, stronger, for example. So that's kind of the vibe I got from it. So there was not one question about sets or reps or anything regarding that nature. Just relationships, communication, things like that.
Let's jump to Emerson next. And I'm not sure when you've actually interviewed Emerson based upon your story.
Yeah, so good question. So for the position now, I would say there was no interview. It was more of a hand-me-down, which I will take all day, but I'll talk more about the assistant role. And it kind of feeds into kind of what Kris said about, I don't think that the university necessarily was looking for anything else besides a good fit for the assistant position. So when I got hired in 2018, the assistant role was pretty much a revolving door. They actually had 2 people turn down the position that they offered it to. And I think I was offered out of a bit of nepotism or a bit of favoritism. I was at the university. I was a student athlete for a long time. People knew who I was, and they probably just fit well. But the experience itself, was pretty eye-opening. The first major interview I had, it was a 5-person panel of various sport coaches. Adam, the manager of the program at that time, which kind of was a interview and then a practical portion leading a small group of athletes through. But I don't know necessarily if it was more just a check mark or they were actually vetting me through the whole process and seeing where my knowledge was at that time. But again, it was more of a culture thing. It was a situational thing. It wasn't necessarily what is your knowledge of strength conditioning at that time. They just wanted to know, hey, can you coach a group of athletes on the floor for a small period of time? And yes, I could. And off we went from there. So I think it was pretty light overall, but it was a good experience, I think, at that time for me.
Sam has requested to ask you a question.
In the hot seat. No. So obviously this shop talk is also to help those that haven't ever been in anyone of our shoes or those shoes to know what the interview process is like. And so Emerson, you've been able to be on the other side of the table with me interviewing others, right? So I brought you in and you've been able to be an interviewer. And so just speak a bit about maybe what you've learned from that process of sitting on the other side of the table interviewing others that may help you, or some information that you could guide others when they go to do an interview. What have you learned on that side?
Yeah, I mean, so probably the most experience I've had is watching other people interview, because that's the majority, and thankful for Sam for giving me those opportunities to be on there. I think the biggest thing is that I feel oftentimes people come in extremely nervous and not willing to kind of spotlight themselves. So in terms of when you are getting questions or we're questioning people, it's very short response, very not elaborating on their experience and things that they could bring to the certain situations. You know, whether it's a theoretical question or a practical question, that people, when they take it, is kind of a generic response and not highlighting, hey, in the past I've done this, or I've seen this and this person has influenced me this way, and that's kind of guided my thinking. So I think even myself, back to those original interviews, that it was kind of, here is the answer that is generic and probably appropriate, but I would never put myself in a position to show how good I think I am, or that kind of situation. I think that's pretty common for a lot of people in those situations. So that's probably off the top of my head what comes to mind.
Cool. Shawn.
Think like, well, our process was typical from the start, but then it took a really nice transition, and I'd seen parts of it done this way, but then it was a new spin to it. So obviously you apply through their system. They contacted only the candidates they wanted to look at, and I don't know how many candidates they had overall, but they had you send in an assignment 2 days prior to the interview, and they gave very specific components how their gym was set up. And I had never seen the Acadia gym, but the detail that went into it was so precise that I could feel myself in there, from down to having how many guys at each rack, how many racks you were utilizing, what other technology you were utilizing for or was accessible, and what I made into that presentation. I think for them it was like, let's make sure this guy knows what he's doing from a programming standpoint. And I'm pretty sure, and Elliot would have to confirm this, but I feel like Elliot was checking things over for them, or at least kind of briefed them on what they should be seeing. Because who was in the review panel was one of the volleyball coaches, who is quite well-rounded from weight room standpoint, but still getting a little advisory would have been good for her. Going back to it though, utilizing and structuring your workout plan was the thing. And for me, I took it as, well, I'm going to design this exactly how I'm going to implement it when I get to the school. And so I did that. And now what I've implemented now is exactly how I thought out the process when I was going through it. Other than change of schedule. And then we just modified and kind of shrunk things down for a condensed schedule. That was the first part. And then the second portion of the interview was a presentation, but they didn't want any slides. They just wanted to hear you present on your vision of how you would take the stakeholders and make everything work at the university as the manager, which I thought was nice. At the same time, you wouldn't be getting caught up in a presentation. You're going to actually talk about it and share your real vision versus going off a script a little bit more. So involving those stakeholders was a key point, and kind of showing them how you want both sides to win, both strength conditioning and the kinesiology department, us and therapy department, us and the sport athlete, the coaches. So that was part two. And then they went into a traditional question answer period. And another kind of cool part I thought they included was they had 2 student athletes in there, and one of which was going into the now 6th year COVID component. So a football player who was one of the the leaders on the football team. So he has kind of seen it all, and he had been there a long time during the period that Elliot was there running that system. And one athlete that was a ACL repair with one of the female sports. And that was a lot of the questions were termed around the return to play protocols that they want to kind of improve on at the university as well. So it was really focused. It was really interesting. It was traditional, but with a little bit of a more focused spin. And I thought it was one of the best interviews, like from my side, that I got to take part in. And it kind of sold me to the sense of how well organized they were, and how much they had their shit together, really, to format the interview to be like that, to be so precise and make the process happen with one big focused interview. And it was time consuming, but it really hit home and hit to the point. So I think that was part of the reason why I selected them as well, as outside of a lot of other factors. But I thought the organization of how they structured that was smooth.
Perfect. And then we'll go to Mac. Mac, a bit of a twist on yours. As far as, was there anything throughout the process that you tried to leverage and gain more information about the future of the position, so that you can put yourself in a good position to carry on there? And were there any questions that you asked around that as far as whatnot?
Yeah, I guess my situation was a little bit different because they knew me. Not to say that it was easy by any means, because we had two sport coaches, one that's filling in on mat leave for our manager position, and they know pretty much what we do as best as any other coaches, I guess, that could have been on the panel. And our associate director of intercollegiate was on it as well as another strength coach that works with track and swimming. So it was fairly comprehensive. I don't think I had to sell me as much. What they were more interested in was, because mine is a 1-year TFT position, they were like, how are we gonna get this back to normal as best as we can, as fast as we can? It was kind of more like that, and kind of wanted to see my process. And I think the way that it was worded, my take on it, and it seemed to pass off fairly well, was what processes and systems are we going to put into play to get things back to normal and do it as safely as possible. And I focus mine more on the student athlete experience, because that's a big thing at Guelph. And that had to do with making sure everyone was doing everything safely and was going to have a good experience and long experience if we ever got to play again. So it's a lot of injury prevention stuff, working with sport coaches to do some more S&C stuff where maybe it's not being done in the gym, but we're innovating with movement preps and cool downs, getting some extra touches in. How are we going to set up our intern, our student staff kind of together to create that foundation to deliver that stuff? Because when Josh left, it was in kind of a smaller, fragile state. We weren't training a lot of people at that time. He had a couple of student staff, a lot of them were graduating. So it's kind of building it up from the ground again and trying to get through this year and then from beyond. But we've already had talks of future and high performance plan and stuff. But I think everyone's just trying to be super fluid right now. And the interview had to do mostly with that. And was I going to be prepared for that and my processes?
Cool, thanks. Just because I'm one of the three hosts and I got no other platform, I think it's ridiculous the amount of work that some employers ask for people to do in advance, when if you actually have people that are experienced review the resumes, you will never end up with 3 to 5 candidates that you even want to consider interviewing. I have helped several people, some of which on this panel, a lot of different ones that had 60 to 100 applicants in jobs, and they're like, how do I get 3 people to interview here? Because you can see right through it. And then all of a sudden you ask professionals that you've deemed worthy of exploring for this position to, in addition to their very busy job, to do a bunch of professional consultancy for you for free and then provide it to you with no compensation. I just think it's ridiculous. I think that everybody that could land one of these jobs and has the resume to get an interview, interview them, throw them in a room and say, here's the scenario. You got 15 minutes, you got 3 colors of marker, there's a whiteboard there, figure it out. And everyone here would be comfortable with it. People that can get these roles, they would be comfortable with that. People that can't, well, they're not going to get the roles, but it's easy sometimes to fake. Like you get this assignment, you have a week to do it, and somebody puts 200 hours into it and sends it in. They're like, man, this guy's dialed in. And then like 3 weeks into the fall, it's like, well, like there's no programs done. You got one team program because it takes not much time. Anyways, soapbox moment for me. But that's something for me in the positions that I've been in as a participant, as I move into different things and within our organization, for instance, the hire that I talked about earlier, like my influence on that is going to be, let's see what people know on the spot. We know that the product's going to be worth, but like no one here that I know has any problem answering a question on the spot. Like it's fairly simple. Anyhow, I'm going to combine a couple of the questions now as we go, but as you guys were approaching the interviews, how did you assess the university and stakeholder needs going into the interview? So what sources did you use to gather information? And then based upon your research, your snooping, your network, because that's what I do, snoop and use my network. Were there any curveballs or unexpected events that happened during the hiring process, and how did you handle those? So start off with Shawn.
I don't think there was any real curveballs at all, to be honest. Like I did my snooping. I contacted Elliot directly, and Elliot shared some information with me as much as he was allowed to. And I thought that was the best way to go to learn how it kind of rolls there. I didn't know anybody else at the university either, so he was pretty willing to chat with me about it. And it gave me an idea what was going on. And then once they announced who was on the interview panel, I just researched the people that were on the panel and what roles they were going to be kind of playing into. And so like we had a person in the kinesiology faculty who, before Elliot did some of the S&C, before Elliot was even around. So you knew it was someone that was supportive, but also within the education side. You had the athletic therapy, you had a couple coaches, you had the student involvement, and then you had the HR. We didn't have the athletic director because it was the hiring process for our athletic director was in process as well. So that was an interesting thing, not having an administrator as a lead there, but it just allowed you to look into who those stakeholders were and be able to craft your vision to look at something that's presentable for that group as well.
Perfect. Wicked thing that came up there from Shawn. Like no one's going to get pissed off if you reach out to them and they can't talk to you. Like people do your research, you can find anybody's email, like social media, whatever it is, and just like ask everything you can. Most people, they want to get the best person in the job as possible, right? So do it up. And then hot tip, I think anyways, is as soon as you find out somebody's left a place, contact them before the job's posted, because it's not a conflict of interest yet. Right? It's not even posted. There's no job. So what are you asking me about, right? You know, it's plausible deniability for everybody.
I had a curveball there.
Yeah,
So,
let's hear it, Mac. I saw you raise your hand there.
Yeah, because Nick's here anyway. So my assistant Nick Gray, and we were talking about this and laughing about it today, is I got hired and confirmed, but they wouldn't start my contract till August 1st. So this is like a couple weeks before, and they're moving pretty quick on the assistant position, which ended up being Nick, fortunately. But they weren't going to let me in on the interview panel for that. They just basically said, can you just tell us what you're looking for and what would best complement you, which kind of like threw me for a loop. And I tried to give my best description of like some people I might have known were interviewing and like what I could kind of like bias, but that was kind of weird.
Head, glasses.
Yeah. And bad golf swing. All that stuff. He's gonna be shitting on me tomorrow for that, but yeah. And even like some of the people like on the hiring process were like, yeah, like someone told me I was getting an assistant, like I'd want to choose. And I was like, so where are we disconnected here? And that was just HR holding us back, I guess. So that was kind of different.
That is very interesting. Kris, how about you? Was it smooth, or obviously it was during COVID and across the country, but
Yeah, so everything was through Zoom, obviously. So biggest thing, I just never been here. I think I've seen pictures, but again, I did my snooping. I talked to staff, I talked to people who've been here, I knew former students that were here. I actually was a couple coaches, I played with them. So I was able to kind of get really like a full 360-degree view of like what I was walking into. As for the surprises, there was really nothing alarming. I had a good idea of what I was walking into before I got here. Other than that, yeah, that's about it.
cool. I'm going to put a twist on it for Emerson. So Emerson, when Adam up and left, and they were like, hey man, you're the guy, figure it out. And similarly, obviously you had a bit more planning time with Sam leaving. Like it was pretty obvious that she was going to be off for a while there. Like, you know, how was the handovers, and like, how did you cope with unexpected things that came up?
Yeah, so I'll speak to the first one. So when Adam left, I would say that I was quite ignorant to the entire situation happening. I was very young and very green and just excited to be there. So Adam had loosely stored a plan of like, this is kind of the schedule you're going to see. These are the teams you're going to see. And then we just kind of ran with it. And I, did my best to program and contact with the coaches. But at that point, we were still, I would say, quite separated in terms of our relationship with the teams and our relationship with athletic therapy and everyone around us. We were kind of in our own little universe in the basement of Tate McKenzie, which was fine. So originally the goal just for me was, let's just have good sessions. Like that's all I really cared about. And every day would just show up with that intention of having those good sessions. And as time kind of went on, start figuring out a little more, communicating with the coaches more and therapy more, and realizing that I think the biggest curveball early on was that we were kind of on our own. It was a very independent process that everyone was doing their own kind of thing. The sport coaches were doing this, we were doing this, athletic therapy's over here, and the athletes would come to me with information from them about this and that and the other. So I think at first it was confusing, and it's hard to interpret when I don't really know how to insert myself into those positions at that time. Especially I'm an assistant, I don't know who's going to be the head. I'm not trying to step on anyone's toes, so it was kind of awkward maybe at first, but we settled into a good routine. But I think this last time around, now that Sam's been here for a few years and established some really good systems, that it was quite easy to inherit. Like the coaches at this point understand what the expectation is and the standard that we go by, and our relationship with therapy is very strong now. So it was quite easy to pick up this time around and just kind of hit the ground running. So yeah, it's been quite smooth.
I like it, man. I like how you brought it back to something. Like a lot of us lose sight of this. I do for sure. When you're just like, hey, let's just focus on having good sessions, right? It's kind of our job. And we focus on a lot of the other things sometimes. So next up here, and like, I understand this is a bit of a sensitive thing. For those of you that have seen me talk about my research, participated in it, or those of you that have actually personally advised on this based upon my research data, you know that like this is big for me. We got into this profession because we like it, but it is a transaction. So once you got an offer, what did that look like? And did you have room to stand up for yourself and your professional status with regard to terms of that contract, whether it be start date, being able to hire an assistant, how many teams you took on, right down to the big ugly one that no one likes to talk about because they're embarrassed how little they pay you guys, and me, like, were you able to negotiate your salary? And how much are you willing to share about how you handled that, and advice you would give for people in the future? So of the four panelists, like if you're willing to answer some or all that, just raise your hand, like the little on your screen, raise your hand thing. Mac raised his hand.
I
Okay,
can
Mac.
share just quickly. Mine's not long, but they gave me a number basically, and it was not that far off from what I was getting as an assistant. Over like a 3-year contract, I guess, versus a 1. And I asked and I said, can we distinguish a little bit more of a difference between my assistant pay and what I'm now as a head? And like, I think it's justified to go up a little bit. And I took a word of advice from Jason Kerr. He said, you can knock once, but maybe not twice. So I knocked once and they bumped me up, and didn't knock again. I just took what they gave me. So I wasn't really arguing for pennies at that point. So
Yeah. You probably can't knock twice on.
Yeah, I was working in BC before that, so I leveraged a higher salary to get a little bit more money because I made them feel guilty. But they were really good about negotiations, actually. So I was fortunate to have 2 offers, and then I weighed them against each other, basically. So
Nice.
originally, Acadia wanted to have an external contract, which means the revenue generation program would pay for my salary. And to me, going out of COVID and potentially going into another year of lockdowns, that's not a thing I wanted to get myself involved in. Whereas other years, I wouldn't hesitate. Probably wouldn't even have thought to negotiate that. But where it was that, and you could lock down and then maybe not make any revenue, that could mean my salary is gone, right? So I did negotiate them with that, and I got an internal contract instead. They bumped me up into a little bit of a higher salary grade, even though it's a good East Coast salary. It was less than the other job even that I was offered, but it was, when you look at the cost of living, it made a lot more sense. It weighed out to be more. And so for me, I thought it was pretty good actually for what, like, I know what the salaries are because I've been in the university system before. I know what's reasonable, what's reasonably offered, not necessarily reasonable, but reasonably offered. And I thought it went okay, so I went with it. It was not really it wasn't a hard process. They were really open to it, and I think people get nervous about approaching people about their salary and what they deserve, and I don't think they need to be as nervous. I think it just needs to be going through. The university is going to deal with certain ranges that they're actually going to be allowed to do, and get them to show you what ranges you're at, and they have to disclose that information to you as well. So if you can validate why you should be in a higher range, then there's no reason not to negotiate into that.
Good for you, Shawn. And I don't know Shawn all that well, but I don't think he's a shitty guy. And I don't think he's a shitty guy for standing up for himself, right? So, and everybody should do that. A friend of mine actually just hired a strength and conditioning coach, and unbeknownst to him, the coach negotiated a $15,000 raise, which HR okayed. And when he found out, he was like, what? Like, if I knew that I could have spent that much money, I would have hired somebody else. And HR was like, yeah, it's only $15K a year. It's not worth rescinding the offer. That's an extreme example, but lots of times once places make an offer, it's very tough not. So yeah, and remember that obviously everybody here knows their credentials, but use language around what you've probably heard me say before. And now we have a little bit of that profile of what an S&C coach is in Canada, if you haven't listened to me harping about it before. But almost everybody has a CSCS. Almost everybody, like 94%, have a bachelor's degree in a related field or above. You know, like almost 50% have a master's degree, and most people have 4 to 6 years of experience or above. It sounds like an educated, qualified professional to me, not some bum making $15, right? And you would never find anyone employed in the university setting, like, I mean, at a university, working for a university as an employee with similar advanced education, accredited certification, and experience, making what coaches. Doesn't happen. Anyways, other two guys, anything? Kris, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I had a little bit of wiggle room. I was able to get them a bit above what they were initially offering me. But the biggest thing is for me was I had what you call, like, can you swear on this thing? Or no? Yeah. So yeah. So basically, you
Have you
had
not
to-
been listening to Jordan for the
Yeah.
last?
Or
So-
Joe, man. Joe set the tone early on. And
my biggest thing is just you gotta have some fuck you money. So I was willing to walk away if they didn't meet at least work with me. All right. And I made that known in, like, obviously acceptable language, but I think that really helped me. So I was willing to just stay where I was. So for me, the biggest thing was I went from an intern, then I moved to Rugby Canada, like in the institute setting. And I was just excited to get a job. I didn't negotiate. I said I took whatever they gave me because it was like my first real crack at the can. And it was just like, hey, you know, a lot of SNCs, we get into the idea of like, they know they need, we need them more than they need us. So I learned from that to kind of negotiate. So again, looking at your research, Jordan, talking to other SNC coaches and kind of how to go about it. So yeah, basically my advice is just, if you are desperate, you'll accept anything. So it's making sure you have, you know, suitable income set up, because as COVID showed us, everyone's almost expendable. They're letting guys go, right? You know, you had bills, you had families, things to take care of. So you got to make sure you're set up.
cool. So I'm trying to think, a little bit of an online audible here. Do we try to ram a bunch of questions into one, or are you guys willing to come on again? Sam, Trevor, panel thoughts. Because I'd love to hear, like, basically where we want to go next is, like, what's the 1, 3, 6, 12, 24 month game plan? And yeah.
Cram it in. We got time.
Okay, cram it in. Let's go. If anyone's got to leave, just leave. Or let us know you got to
I
leave.
got all night, man. I don't go to
Yeah.
bed till 1 a.m.
You're asleep there looking at the
I haven't been
computer.
up this late in 2 months, so.
Okay, keep going. So I will still try to cram together, but so what are some of your guys' strategies, you know, for startup and onboarding? Obviously, you're all in similar but very different situations as far as inheriting something. How much are you keeping? How much are you making your own? Yeah, how and what information are you using to develop that startup plan and onboarding? Your short-term, medium, and long-term plan. Start off with, I'm going to go with Emerson first here. And what's your strategy? Obviously, like, you've been around longer than the person, like way longer than the person that you replaced. And what's your strategy? Sam's not allowed to get pissed off if you talk about things that you want to change. You're in charge. She's actually not even permitted to be knowing what you're doing during this year legally. So what's your game plan kind of in that short, medium, long term, knowing that there's kind of an end to the current position that you're in, but you're still going to be around?
Yeah, so I mean, really good question. I would say the fortunate thing about the relationship that we have and working with Sam is that she's included me in a lot of the decisions we've made. So I think a lot of the things that are in place right now have been, you know, her brainchild, but also with the input of myself. So I feel attached to the system that we've created. I'm also a big know your role guy, and I don't think, you know, this year is not my role to reinvent the wheel. So I'm not going to try to take any risks and reinvent, you know, what we do or the processes. I think what we have in place is incredible. I think my biggest goal for the soon future in these next few months is to get back to it. It's been a long time since we've been successful in the plans that we've laid out in the first few years that we were here. So I just want to get back to our consistency and all of our, you know, consistent sessions, our integration with the teams, and our monitoring and everything that we were providing before is just reintegrating that. I think the things that I'm, you know, taking my own spin on is that we do have 2 new assistant coaches. We have a completely new work study staff and a new GA program that we just started. So culturally, I think a big thing of my goal this year is putting my own stamp on that and the way that I like to run things and the ideas I have about how the staff functions. So just simply as, how I want the assistants to operate on a day-to-day basis, how I want the work studies to integrate on a day-to-day basis, and the attitude and mindset that they have, and just kind of putting that in place and taking my spin that way. But in terms of the bigger picture items, I think what we've had in place and what we've been building isn't done yet. So just continuing to take those steps forward. So knowing, hopefully, unless she pulls a maneuver on me and doesn't come back, my goal is to get to the end of this year and just keep, return to what we've had before and reestablish all the plans that we had for the future when this all started.
How many bullshit lists did she leave you that you don't think you need? Don't answer that question. Shawn or Kris or Mac next. Let's move on.
I can go if you want. I think like this year for me, and I told them starting out, it was going to be looking at what the structure is and seeing what was left over after 1 year of Elliot being gone. Basically, what was left maintained, because I hired one guy that was there internal previously, who kind of stayed on as an assistant, who kind of filled that role, and then hired one more assistant who was a former athlete there. So basically, I wanted to see what was there that'll fit within my system, and then I took football and I'm going to run my system right away with them. And from there, I want to be able to take care of our student program first. So that's going to be one of my bigger concerns early on. I'm going to let the revenue generation program run like it had run and see what we need to modify to maybe get more in there if it needs that. Because I think Elliot was doing a really good job there, and I don't think you need to reinvent the wheel if it's still running. But I think when he left, that year of gap, definitely some spokes kind of broke. So it's finding where those little gaps are and making sure those are good, at the same time getting back to what they want to implement with sports science as a little bit of the pathway as well. We kind of lost track with our Kinduck system, and I want to bring that back. I want to get some more technology in there, so we're monitoring our athletes, and not even just for the sake of monitoring the athletes, but educating the students and having a pathway for them to learn that, so that when they come out of university, they've seen a lot of different technology utilized and can be effective in a job role when they come out of school.
Wicked, Kris.
So for me, it was kind of like a blank slate. Not much had been implemented, so there was no internship program. That's something that I'm looking to do. So again, just started small this year, trying to get 10 people and then try to just figure it out. So kind of developed a curriculum and talking to various other strength coaches. The next thing was in terms of just how we organize our time. So previous strength coaches is 12 hours a day in the dungeon we got. So they were not sport practices and things like that. So it's right away trying to develop a relationship with coaches and show them more than we're just guys who just want to lift heavy weights, cutters, from that meathead mentality kind of thing. So biggest thing for me is making sure we develop some type of structure. So I'm kind of breaking it down to like structure, systems, and culture. So biggest thing we want to do is just implement these things as we go along slowly. It's a slow burn approach, but the biggest thing for me is getting an internship program going. Because again, it's 2 of us and there's 400 athletes. There's trying to get more things, but it takes some time.
Who'd you hire as your assistant? Was it Joe Latina, or did I make that up?
Who?
I guess it wasn't him. Who did you hire as your assistant?
So he was actually at the University of Ottawa with women's rugby, Tanner Care.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Man, I got bad intel.
Yeah, where did Joe get hired though? Joe Vecchione or Joe?
So he got hired at UBC.
Oh.
Yeah. So I don't know if he's there.
Well, the 10 people on here know that now. So
Yeah.
Four.
He was there. I was looking at him originally, but again, money talks. So, again, I wished him all the best. I explained to him there's no hard feelings. You got to do what's best for you. And you can never harp on someone for going to take a better job or a job that's a better situation in terms of more money. So I'm cool.
Cool. And then Mac with a bit of a twist as far as do you got any strategy like in that 9 to 12 month range to just like dig your claws into this thing?
Well, similar to Emerson, we're just trying to get back to as normal as possible. And I have a really good idea what that was because I was there previously. Josh obviously laid the great foundation, and I was there to help build things up and be a little bit more creative near the end there. So I think Nick and I we're basically told by our management that that's our focus right now is building back up varsity, but they're not wasting any time with our previous relationships on the revenue side. The other organizations coming in, knocking on our door, asking for training and stuff. And I'm pretty adamant about like, let's make sure that we are ready to do that. Like, so I'm trying to advocate for us and our department and our staff that we need the people to do it and we need the time to do it. And we're jamming all these teams into our weight room, and football is getting their alumni stadium renovation. That's a whole nother thing, but they're supposed to be out in October. That could be longer. So we don't really have as much capacity as we usually do. So that's one thing that we're handling. So I'm just kind of overseeing that, but we'll need coaches to do that, and they don't want us doing it. So that's a conversation. They've also talked about like a high performance vision, which has always been kind of in the talks. I'm sure everyone else has had that. And it's nice to talk about tech and reinventing the wheel and doing all this sexy stuff. But if your coaches aren't responding to emails and meetings and can't do all the basic stuff well, then what the fuck are we doing? Like, why are we talking about high performance when we can't even do that stuff well? So I think that Josh taught me really well to have better conversations about that stuff. And I'm a little bit more abrasive, I think, than he was. And he'd probably agree, but maybe put it in different words. But I'm not afraid to kind of say how I feel. And I have to be a little bit careful because I'm in a 1-year contract, but no longer are we accepting that like people don't know what we do in the weight room. Coaches, staff around athletics, like it's kind of ridiculous that we like Nick goes on a tour to get shown the building, and our new therapists are on that tour as well, and they don't even go up to our high performance center. Like, it's just those little things, and I've already had those conversations, and it's like, you want to be high performance, but we can't do these things, the basic things well. So we have ideas for that, but I think on the ground level, there's some things that need to be changed. So right now we're just trying to get everyone back to what is as normal as possible. And I think Nick and I kind of have a good process in place for that. But I think it's naive of us to think further than what our contract is, because there's a lot more work to do and a lot more conversations to have.
Cool. Thanks, buddy. I just realized this, Kris Robertson. This is the Rugby Canada shirt that I won. Remember that Sandro hooked me up with at the CSCA Christmas party? I won like on a door draw, and I got a game worn jersey and all this dry fit stuff. Guys, legit. So that was a nice lead in, Mac, for our next 2 questions that I'm going to loop together. Everyone cuts loose. It's like 40 o'clock down east for Shawn right now. So, and it's like, it's still 2 a.m. for Kris Robertson. So, yeah, Sam, I was going to loop that in message, but so kind of combining a couple things. Did you guys have any options, like probably Kris and Shawn more so, as far as like, how much are you going to work? How many teams are you going to service? What level of service are you going to offer? And then loop that in with, did you ask any questions, or were you provided any information about how you're going to be evaluated? So obviously during interviews, we all promise a lot of different things. We get on the ground floor and we're not really sure how it's going to be determined whether we're doing a great job or not. two-parter. Did you have any options on how much service you were offering? We'll start off with Kris because he just came off mute. And then is it clear how you're going to be evaluated in the short, medium, and long term?
Yeah, so I was kind of showing the schedule. The biggest thing for me is I got 2 kids now, all right? And I just needed to be home. So for me, it was being able to work again regular hours. So again, I come in 6, 7, and I'm out of here 2, 3, right? And that gets me home to have dinner with the wife and everything. Whereas previous years, I've been working evenings. So again, I worked again 12 to 8, 12 to 9, 12 to 10. So I was missing a lot of family time. So no matter what the schedule was, I was going to do mornings, and then whoever my assistant was going to do more so that evening shift. In terms of work hours, biggest thing was I just said to them, I'm not going to, if you want me to stay in this position for a long time, a lot of SNCs, they burn out. They work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. So for me, I said to them, I'm just not that person that's going to be, again, burning all those hours. So there had to be adequate help to get that done. And I think, it's still early, but, I've done a pretty good job of making sure that I don't work too much. I also have a wife that too kind of keeps me in check too as well, which is really nice. With regards to, what was the second part of that question?
Did you have any options? Well, I think that was the second part, but sorry, how are you going to be evaluated? Who's evaluating?
Yeah. So pretty much it is pretty much being evaluated essentially is just my relationship with the coaches. And, if things don't blow up down there pretty much. Again, generally the people who are hiring is, are they happy with your service? Are their athletes staying healthy? Are their athletes, I don't even think it's really much about performance. It's just, are they staying healthy? Are they able to perform? Do the coaches have a good rapport with you? So a lot of it is really built on communication, relationships. Again, are you likable?
Cool. Shawn?
Yeah, I'll start with the back end of that question first with evaluation. I asked the question in the interview, and again, like, they didn't have their AD hired. So for them, the answer was it will be on like what the feedback is from the coaches that I'm working with, and at the discretion basically of the athletic director that comes in. And truthfully, like, even though it's unknown right now, I really do hope we can come up with some sort of evaluation system that can actually evaluate your performance. So how can it factor things in, whether it's some component of, how much injury reduction are we looking at? Are we getting better? Where are our wins and losses? What does our budgets look like from a revenue generation standpoint? Because that's important as well within at least in my role. So hopefully that gets developed, because I would like to have evaluation, because I would like to see where I need to improve on to make the program stronger as well. But that's where that one sits at the moment. And then from a standpoint of with teams, like, they asked that in the vision, and I said, I think comparably, if you want me to be an administrator like you want it to be done, I would have football and potentially one other team full time where I would coach it. And where we have a little bit smaller weight room, like, I have to run 4 to 5 sessions on Monday and Wednesday with football to get all the football guys in. So that's enough. Like, that's enough coaching plus one other team when we're going to be doing all the staff management, student placements, making sure that they're all in the right places, making sure other coaches are happy from a sourcing standpoint. But then I ended up going and taking men's hockey on as well, because they're hosting USPORT this year. So I want them to have the best chance to win. And I thought by taking them on and having an assistant kind of come on with that is the best way to go about that this year. So I took on a little bit more than I originally had planned to, but trying to get that all sorted. And now that our students are coming in, letting them get out to run our warm-ups and cool downs and all that, rather than me jumping around the facility to get some of that stuff done, is kind of where it's at the moment. So it started out with a specific vision of, coach a bit and administrate a lot, and it turned into filling the gaps for the students that are coming in later. So hopefully things come up smoothly, but so far the students that are trickling in seem to be pretty good, and I'm pretty confident about the direction that they're heading into.
Couldn't help yourself, eh? Taking on men's hockey. Classic SNC move.
Yeah, I couldn't help it,
Emerson, I know
Yeah.
it's probably a little bit different based upon kind of how you've been conducting yourself here. What are some goals you've set for yourself, like through this year? Like, what do you want to try to get better at? And at the end of the year, like not having the place burned down and Sam being happy to come back to it. I don't think that's how you're going to gauge your success. Like, what are you hoping to get out of this from a personal, professional side? What are some goals you set for yourself, and how are you going to determine that?
Yeah, so I think professionally, the next step for me and why I'm excited about this position is being, in charge of a manager type position with people directly reporting to me and being in that position. I think up until this point, I feel confident with my being a lead coach for a team and interacting with them and servicing their needs, but never being in a position to necessarily be the person to critique others and watch others and ensure that their progress is, going along correctly in the way that we wanted to see it done. And I think me just as a person is kind of maybe a yes person, a yes man, and I've never had to be on the other side of this is what we need to see done. And I think that's my biggest thing I want to get out of it is learning how to make hard decisions and deliver criticism when it is necessary for the greater goal, and not just, sugarcoating everything for everyone all the time. And I think that's something, Sam has worked with me on for a bit now, but I think that is my ultimate goal. And I think how do I judge that success by the end of the year is just, seeing the way that our staff operates. And, if we can have success with the guys that we're working with now and they can do a good job, then I think that is a reflection on me doing a good job with that. So I think that's the biggest thing is just learning how to be a big boy.
Awesome. And Mac, were you in the position to ask any questions about that as far as, what they wanted after this year? And were you bold enough to say like, hey, like, how do I put myself in the position that in the 13th month that?
Not really. We never really got to that. That's how I think my role is a little bit different. I think those conversations are coming now that we're starting to get into the role of things and getting things established. I'm sure I am sure that I'm gonna have those conversations eventually, but like I said, I think they're just looking for a legit patch job, to say it quite frankly. But yeah, I got nothing else really. I'm burnt out, man. I'm the same as Joe. This first real day of training it took a lot out of us today. So
Yeah, you gave. Yeah. Cool. So that's actually like all I'm going to go through on the questions. We're already run kind of a little bit late. I don't know if there's anything from Sam or Trev, but certainly I think what we're going to do is wrap this up for tonight, but also do a career one down the road. Potentially we'll have a bunch of guests on there, or people can mail in suggestions or something like that. It always seems to be challenging. I know that we're part of the problem. I'm part of the problem. It always seems to be challenging to have a lot of people contribute because we all have a lot to say. That's a good problem to have, but we will try to carry on with something like that in the future. As far as wrapping it up, anything from Sam or Trev?
can I just add one thing? If there is
Absolutely.
any interest of people wanting to get their hands dirty and coach, we'll take some volunteers gladly.
I heard Nick Gray is looking for work. Yeah, he's in Guelph.
Nah, not him.
Completely booked up. Can't get over there.
You got any questions, Trev?
I want to take some of Mac's interns. That's what I want.
Hey, you already have one. You got Dimmy. We groomed him real well for you. So.
Okay, let's just shut her down so that people can feel like they can leave. We can chat after, but So that's it for the recording. Thanks a lot from Kris, Emerson, Shawn, and Mac for sharing, a lot of this information that sometimes it's tough. It's tough to hear from other people unless you have a personal relationship with them. And I really appreciate your guys' open honesty of putting things out there to help kind of the current and next generation of strength coaches about how to navigate some of these things that, as you guys shared, can be quite stressful for people. And where do you get real information that's going to help you land the job instead of kind of fictional BS or reading something in Forbes magazine. So thanks again for that, guys. And we'll be back in about a month with our next edition.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks for having me.
So